I want to talk about this case of Jordan Neely because that's a big thing in the news, and it's another example of just the injustice that we have like in our society, especially when it comes to how the people who have the least amount of money, power, and influence are actually treated. So, what exactly happened, right? Who is Jordan Neely? Well, he was a homeless person in New York City who was a street performer and kind of had some problems like mental health problems. This is what happens when unfortunately, a lot of homeless people do have mental health problems, and that is part of the reason why they're homeless, right? And he had sort of an episode on a subway, and may have been yelling at people, may have been maybe threatening people. And what happened? What happened is that a guy named Daniel Penny, who's an ex-Marine, took it upon himself to become the hero and went up and got Jordan Peely in a headlock, a sleeper hold, basically. Brought him to the ground, restrained him in a sleeper hold for 15 minutes. And, of course, it did not end well. Jordan Neely ended up dying at a hospital shortly thereafter. And this has caused some major outrage because if you can guess, this guy Daniel Penny did not get arrested. He was not arrested. Once again, another example of a white person murdering a black person or attempting to murder a black person, and the perpetrator just not being held accountable until there is some public outrage. All right. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you remember, kind of reminds me of Trayvon Martin. Again, the Trayvon Martin case. Because what was the big deal with Trayvon Martin, right? It wasn't the fact that he was murdered or anything like that. That's really wasn't the reason why people got angry and started protesting over Trayvon Martin. The reason why people got angry is because the guy Zimmerman, who shot Trayvon Martin, was not arrested. He was basically, they brought him in, they questioned him, and then they just let him go. And the police didn't arrest him. And they did not arrest, for like, it took like months. And then they didn't arrest him until there was public outcry. Until that story hit the news, and then people started protesting over it. And, calling for this arrest and stuff like that. Then the cops decided, okay, we better go arrest him. If you remember, the same kind of thing happened not that long ago with the guy Andrew Lester. If you remember, about 2 weeks ago, this was the case where the 15-year-old kid, his name was, I got it right here, his name was Ralph Yari, walks up to the wrong house and knocks on this guy's door, this 85-year-old guy's door, and this guy Lester just shoots him through the door. And luckily Ralph Yari survived. He didn't die. But the thing is that they didn't arrest him. It's like, it took like 5 days for the cops to actually like arrest him, right? And this is only after there was public outcry. And it just seems to be like that's the pattern. It's like, if you're a white person in this country and you could just straight up attempt to murder or actually murder a black person and just won't be held accountable unless like it gets in the news and a bunch of people start protesting, then the cops will like go and hold you accountable. And if you think that this is like, oh, this is just standard procedure, blah blah blah, the cops are doing an investigation, whatever, imagine if this was the other way around. Imagine if Jordan Neely was white man on a subway, and then the other guy Daniel Penny was black, and then the black man went and got the white guy in a sleeper hold and killed him. Do you think for a nanosecond, if these roles were reversed, that Daniel Penny would not have been arrested? Right? Here's the thing, they have it on video, for fuck's sake, right? There's not any question that he did it. They know that he fucking did it. Here's the other thing, right? In the video, you can clearly see the guy Jordan Neely. He's screaming and yelling and stuff, but he's not physically assaulting anybody. He's screaming, he's yelling, he's saying things like, I'm hungry and desperate, right? That's what he was yelling about. I'm hungry because he was homeless and he was hungry and he hadn't eaten in like, days or whatever. And he was saying, I'm hungry, I'm desperate, I don't care if I go to jail, whatever, right? He was pissed off because he was, fucking tired of being homeless, right? Wanted some help. Nobody was helping him. Did he threaten people? He didn't say I'll kill anybody or anything like that that I'm aware of. Did he say I'll kill someone? Whatever. Did he? All right, maybe he did. If he did or not. Did he actually attack anybody? No. Did not actually attack anyone. He was not being violent. And remember, the guy had mental issues too. He was having like a mental breakdown. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality when it comes to a lot of homeless people. I mean, why do you think they're homeless? It's because in this country, we don't really treat our mental illnesses very well. A large portion of the homeless people in this country are either mentally unwell, one way or another, depression or something like that, or schizophrenia. You see that a lot. A lot of homeless schizophrenics or someone who's bipolar, whatever. We just don't give a shit about that because we don't have a universal health care in this country. So if you don't have the money, you don't get treatment. And a lot of the homeless people on the street are people who would be absolutely fine if they just got treatment. Another thing is that a lot of homeless people are drug addicts because we treat drug addiction like it's a crime and not a disease like it should be. And this is why, for example, in places like Northern Europe, like Sweden and Norway, stuff like that, they have much lower instances. I mean, there's homeless people there too, but it's much, much lower because they actually take care of their people. Because if you have mental issues, you can go to the hospital and get treatment, and you don't need to have thousands and thousands of dollars. If you have a drug problem, you can go to rehab and get treatment and not have to worry about getting thrown in jail, shit like that, right? I mean, that's the other thing is that it costs money to get these things. So if you don't have the money, like let's say, if you do have an untreated mental issue, right? Mental problem, if you don't have the money, then you don't get the treatment, right? So it's like it's very much, only the rich people, only people who can afford it, who can actually afford a therapist and who can afford to take the time off of work to go to the therapist. Those are the only people that get help in the United States. It's so then you wonder like, well, why do we have 500,000 homeless people? Which I could tell you right now, it's way more than 500,000, right? Homeless people. That's an estimate. It's probably closer to like 3 or 4 million homeless people in the United States. Let's be real, folks, right? But why do we have so many goddamn homeless people when other countries don't? Not for these reasons. Other countries do have homeless people, right? But not because they're mentally insane or addicted to drugs. Well, all right, I will clarify that. Countries like Russia have mentally insane and drug addicted people living on the streets, but you don't see it in other first world countries, places like Japan, right? Places like northern Norway, like Sweden, like France, for example. France has a ton of homeless people. I was there. I saw it. There's like beggars on the street in France. You know what they're not? They're not drug addicts, right? They're just poor. I mean, so it's not like, yeah, it doesn't completely solve that problem. But at the same time, it's like you can greatly reduce it if you just actually take care of your populace. But we refuse to do that in the United States because of conservatives. Because conservatives run everything, we refuse to actually take that step. We refuse to give people the help they need. We want to punish people who are addicted to drugs, drug offenders. They should go to jail, stuff like that. We don't want to help them get off of drugs. Yeah, you can go get your mental, you can go get therapy or whatever, but you better be at work at 9 a.m. or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, we're not paying for it. People won't do it if you don't help them. I mean, that's the problem. So anyway, getting back to this. So this guy, getting back on the subject, Jordan Neely was not harming anybody, was not threatening anybody, did not move to threaten anybody. In fact, in his deposition there, Daniel Penny admitted that no one was in actual danger. So why did he attack this guy? I can tell you right now what his excuse is going to be. His excuse is going to be, well, I thought he was going to attack somebody. Well, I felt like these people were in danger because he was being threatening. Well, it's like threatening someone and actually engaging in violence are two different fucking things. If there's a guy ranting a crazy person on the subway, this happens all the time. You see it here, and there's not really subways in Los Angeles, but if you ever take the bus in Los Angeles, I mean, I guess there are subways now, but if you ever take public transportation, there's always weird people on public transportation, right? That's just why it's there. So you always get weird people, you get crazy people, you get people that are like whatever, and then occasionally people start fights and they threaten each other, blah 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 blah, right? But if no one actually attacks you, if no one is actually threatening you or like actually physically attacking you or somebody else, then you're not allowed to just fucking kill them like that, right? Like the law says it's self-defense only. Like a chokehold, obviously, when you get someone in a chokehold for 15 minutes, that is lethal force. It just is. I mean, shit, the guy died. Okay. Normally, you don't even have to hold someone. If you get someone in a chokehold like that and they pass out after like a few seconds, and then you can just let them go. Right? That's how you're supposed to use those things. That's how you're supposed to do a sleeper hold, by the way, is that they pass out and then you let them go. But you're not supposed to hold them for 15 fucking minutes like that. No wonder the fucking guy died. I mean, this dude is a Marine. He probably learned how to do that shit in the Marines. Apparently, they didn't teach him in the Marines when to let go because, he's a Marine. He's supposed to be killing people. That's the whole idea of being in the armed forces, is to learn how to kill people. So I guess he got that part down pretty well. But it's different. This is like civilian life. You're not allowed to just fucking kill people like that. And this is like part of the whole thing when you get to like this notion that we need a good guy with a gun to stop bad guys with the guns. It's the same fucking thing. This is why you shouldn't allow people to take the law into their own hands. Because they don't know what they're doing. They don't have the training to know when it is acceptable to use force and when it's acceptable to use lethal force. This guy didn't know. If it was a police officer, he probably would have been trained. If this guy, Daniel Penny, was a police officer, he probably would have been trained to know, okay, this is how you detain someone without fucking murdering them. And he probably would have known what the law is, saying you're only allowed to use proportional force. That's what the law says. When you defend yourself, you're not allowed to, like, say, for example, if some guy pushes you and then you pull out a gun and shoot them in the face, that's not proportional force. Now, if you're in a straight up brawl and you think that the other guy may kill you and you shoot them, that's different. If somebody comes up and just say like bumps you like in your car, like say you're at a stoplight, he just sort of pulls up and bumps you by accident, and then like you get out of your car and he just gives you the middle finger, doesn't want to talk to you or whatever, right? And you go, "Hey man, I need your driver's license," and the guy just says "fuck you." Then you're not allowed to then you like say you pull your gun out and you shoot him in both kneecaps after that. You go to jail for that, right? You're not allowed to do that. That is using a disproportionate amount of force, right? This guy, Daniel Penny, didn't know that because he wasn't a cop, because he wasn't trained. He was just a normal person who like wanted to be a fucking vigilante, trying to pretend that he's Batman or some shit like that, and accidentally got somebody killed. Because this is why you don't have vigilantes. This is why it's wrong for people to take the law into their hands. It's the same fucking argument as to why you're not allowed to say, like, take a gun to a protest in order to defend your friend's car dealership, and then you end up shooting two people when one of them threw a bottle at you. Right? Like Daniel Rittenhouse, for example. Right? Or Kyle Rittenhouse, excuse me. I always call him Daniel. Like Kyle Rittenhouse, for example. That's why you're not allowed to do shit like that. So yeah, Daniel Penny finally got arrested after like 2 weeks of public outcry. This motherfucker finally got arrested. And if you look around, of course, what's the reaction from the right wing is that predictably they're all defending this fucking guy. Every single one of the idiot fucking right wing talking head asshole MAGA chuds is trying to pretend that this dude Daniel Penny is some kind of fucking hero. So I've got a bunch of tweets that I've collected. Let me just open up a bunch of these things for you guys here. Let's turn on our laptop. And here is the nice little tweet failstorm. Here is one from Vivek Ramaswamy. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the stream. Restrain a violent thug and you get 15 years in prison. Kidnap a child, assault the elderly, rack up 42 arrests, and you get free reign to terrorize and prey on the innocent. This is not the rule of law. What's he referring to? Kidnap a child, assault the elderly, rack up 42 arrests. It's because this guy Jordan Neely had priors, right? And here's the thing, right? Yeah, you do end up getting priors when you're homeless because you get harassed. Now, was he guilty of kidnapping a child or assaulting the elderly? I don't know anything about that. I don't know what his priors are. And you should really not take what somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy says at face value because he's most likely getting his information from some right-wing fucking blog out there and is completely wrong. Most likely, the victim, Jordan Neely, most likely his priors have to do with things like sleeping in public. Stuff like that. Littering, that kind of thing. You know, this is what they arrest homeless people for. So that's most likely what it is. And kind of sounds like, looking from all the news articles and things, is that the guy was pretty peaceful and was sort of a staple on the subway. Like he was a Michael Jackson impersonator. So he'd go up, he was a street performer. That's how he made money. And he would like dance and shit and people would give him money. You get the right-wingers here, and because he had a prior criminal record, suddenly he must be some kind of violent thug. You know, that's what it says right here, restrain a violent thug. Keep in mind, Jordan Neely was not being violent towards anybody. He was having a mental episode. He was ranting and raving and screaming and stuff like that. But was he being violent? Was he hitting anybody? Did he attack anyone? No. He didn't attack anyone at all. It's all in the framing, folks. All in the framing. Here's another one from Michael Knowles. Let's move that over here. Michael Knowles, hideous miscarriage of justice. Not only should Penny not be prosecuted, he should be given the key to the city and a ticker tape parade. Key to the city and a ticker tape parade because he murdered someone. Because he went and attacked someone who was not being violent. Remember, Jordan Neely was not attacking anybody. He was screaming. If I just go on a bus or a subway and just start screaming, does that mean that you have a right to murder me? Is this what I'm being told by Michael Knowles here? That if I just disturb at the very most, what law is that? What is it? Screaming and yelling? What law are you breaking? Disturbing the peace. At the very least, that's what it would be, right? Did he threaten somebody? Okay, yeah, maybe you're not allowed to threaten people. But was he actually engaging in violence? No. So the appropriate punishment for that is a ticket. You get a ticket for that. You don't get the death penalty for that. They're trying to frame this like this dude Neely was some kind of gang member or some shit, that he was like going down and terrorizing people in the subway, kicking people in the face and urinating on their babies and shit like that. And it's like, no, he was just a guy that was a street performer who was fucking kind of having a mental breakdown. And this fucking dude came up and just killed him. And would have got away with it too if it wasn't for those pesky black people giving him a public backlash. Like, if it wasn't from I would have done it too if it wasn't for you damn black people. Like, seriously. That's what this shit is, man. All right. Here's one from Tommy Lauren. You guys remember Tommy Lauren? She was sort of like a rising conservative star who accidentally admitted that she's in support of abortion and then got like taken down a bunch of pegs. Like, yeah, she's still around. She's still around. She's actually on the Blaze now, I believe. Tommy Lauren. Weird, his family didn't give a shit about him until they saw those dollar signs. Because it's all about the money. And yeah, I can, a little comment on this. Yeah, his family didn't probably care about him. Because, surprise folks, not everybody has the best relationship with their family. I mean, if he had an awesome relationship with his family, he probably wouldn't have been homeless to begin with, right? But that is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if he had the best relationship with his family either, or if they all fucking hated each other. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is that he didn't attack anyone, and he was murdered for making a lot of noise, for screaming, for yelling. He was murdered for that, right? And see, this is just, and the reason I brought this tweet up because it's another way of dehumanizing this person, right? Dehumanizing Jordan Neely. She can go on and say, "Oh, his family didn't give a fuck about him. Well, why should we care about him? Oh, it's all about the money. This thing didn't really happen. If there was no money involved, nobody would be raising a stink over this." That's what she's trying to say here. Fuck Tommy Lauren. Seriously, fuck her. She's a fucking bitch. Here is Ian Miles Chong. Daniel Penny is a good man who is being persecuted by the public and prosecuted for political reasons. He stood up to protect the crowd when no one else would. The man has good instincts, and the world would be a much better place if more people had his instincts. His instinct was to attack someone, and apparently he didn't have enough instincts to know that you're not supposed to hold a guy in a sleeper hold for 15 minutes and strangle him to death. Apparently his instincts weren't good enough to fucking, include that. I mean, if he was a good man, you know what you do in this situation, right? If you think someone is gonna, let's say, let's take a hypothetical situation, right? Let's say you're in a restaurant. Let's say you're at a bus stop or something like that. Or you're in the mall and you see some guy who you think is crazy or whatever, who's being threatening. And let's say that he's threatening some people, like an old couple or something. And you're afraid that this dude is going to attack them. You know what you do in that situation? You stand in between the crazy guy and the old people. You walk up and you stand in between them and you say, okay, back off. If you're going to fight someone, you're going to fight me. That's what you do. Okay. And then you just, if you want to defend someone, if he was really afraid, let's say there were some teenage girls there or some shit, and this guy was afraid that the evil, crazy, homeless, insane person was going to go and beat the shit out of these two teenage girls or whatever, and he wanted to be the subway hero. You don't ambush a guy from behind before he does anything and choke him out and kill him. What you do in that situation is you go and you stand in between him and the people he's threatening, and you tell him to fucking back off. And if he tries any shit, then it's self-defense, because that's what you do in that situation. You go, okay, I'm standing here. If you attack them, if you attack me, I'm gonna kick your ass, and then it's self-defense. Then you're justified, right? Then when the cops come and you go, after you flatten that motherfucker, then when the cops come, you say it was self-defense. He was threatening those people. I stood in between them to try to defend them. And then guess what? You don't go to fucking jail. That's how you're supposed to do it. That's how it's supposed to be, right? Proportional response, right? Self-defense. Not just fucking ambushing a dude behind him. It's kind of like if I were to say this were to happen, and instead of choking him out, if you would have pulled out a pistol and then shot him in both legs. And be see, hey, he was going to he was threatening those people over there, so I had to defend them. It's no, you're not. That's not how you fucking do it. So yeah, Daniel Penny is not a good man. He doesn't have good fucking instincts. The guy's a fucking killer. He's a killer, and he deserves to go to jail, because you're not allowed to just fucking kill people if they're making noise, if they're angry, if they're having a mental breakdown. You're not allowed to just kill them. There has to actually be some violence first. Self-defense is the only rational and legal way for you to engage in violence is self-defense. Was it self-defense? No, it was not self-defense, right? He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't defending anybody else. Fucking bullshit. Here is another one. DC Drano. We see him on Twitter all the time. Daniel Perry and Daniel Penny both served our country in uniform. Both are being imprisoned because a Soros-funded DAs targeted them for defending innocent lives from leftist street violence. This is the social injustice future for all of us, if we don't fight back now, free these men. Daniel Perry, of course, is the guy who shot Garrett Foster in Texas. I'm sure you guys remember that. He's the one that went, because what it was that Daniel Perry was the guy that tweeted to his friend and did a bunch of text messages to his friend sharing memes about how he wanted to run people over, a bunch of racist shit like that. And then he ran a stoplight and ran into a Black Lives Matter protest. And then Garrett Foster happened to have a gun, walked up to him because there was up in that time, there was this sort of rash of people fucking running over protesters and getting away with it. Daniel Perry just shot him. Saw him, walked up, and admitted that Garrett Foster was not pointing his gun at him and just decided to kill him anyway. And was convicted of murder. The governor of Texas is going to pardon him. Let's not forget about that. Daniel Perry. That's who that guy is. So, of course, DC Drano here is comparing him to Daniel Penny because what he's basically saying here is that it should be fine for right-wingers to kill people. That's what he's basically saying. That these guys are heroes, that it's A-okay when they kill other people, and they should be allowed to get away with it. Innocent lives from leftist street violence. In both of these cases, there was no violence. Let's just keep that in mind, right? Daniel Perry ran his car into a crowd. He ran a red light, drove into a crowd. He's the one who instigated the violence. He's the one who shot first. Nobody shot at him first. Nobody smashed his car up. Nobody was trying to drag him out and like curb stomp him or any shit like that. He shot first. He did it on purpose. Daniel Penny went up and attacked someone just because he was like being loud and rude and screaming. Someone who didn't attack anybody. Jordan Neely did not engage in any physical violence with anyone whatsoever. So in both of these cases, these two guys are the guys who instigated the violence, not the other way around. They didn't defend innocent lives from leftist street violence. And what the fuck is it? And in the other case, like, what makes Jordan Neely a leftist, by the way? Like, what? Because he was black? So if you're black, you're automatically a fucking leftist? Bullshit. I really like this part, the Soros-funded DA part, because Soros-funded... Yeah, you got to throw some anti-Semitism in there, too. Can't get away, you can't just make a... It can't just be... No, it has to be the fault of the Jews, obviously. Now we're going to start getting to some really fucking messed up ones. This is a guy named N Wokeness, who is essentially a fucking Nazi. This dude right here. N Wokeness is a Nazi. And he's on Twitter. This is one of the guys that the Texas shooter was following, that from last week, the guy that went into shot 8 people in a mall in Texas, who ended up being a fucking white supremacist. Like, he was a fan of this dude. So here we go. I'm ready to go to jail. I'll hurt anyone. Not so fast. Jordan Neely was lynched. It's almost like it's like they make fun of it. Like, this guy is dead. Jordan Neely is dead, murdered, dead in the ground, dead. The cruelty is the point. It's there's no compassion for human lives. I mean, besides the obvious fucking injustice of the whole thing, there's just no compassion for it. It's like they don't care. They're the worst fucking people ever. I guess it's heroic now to just murder someone on the subway as long as they're black, I guess, right? This is the kind of shit you're seeing on Twitter all the time. Remember earlier, like, when I said Twitter is indistinguishable now from Getter or fucking Truth Social or Parler or Fapper or whatever dumbass fucking alt-right wannabe Twitter ripoff is. Like, there's no need for any of those other bullshit alt-right ripoff sites anymore. Like, when you can just get shit like this on normal Twitter. This is stuff that would, like, get you banned a year ago. Right, when Twitter actually used to be good and could actually be a tool for, like, social change and shit. Like, now Twitter is just, like fucking far right-wing Nazi shit posting. And that's all Twitter is. Another one from this fucking asshole. Let's continue on here. And wokeness. They defund your police, close the mental asylums, and let the criminals out of jail. Then they do this if you try to step in. This is, of course, Daniel Penny being arrested, finally, after 2 weeks of, getting away scot-free after fucking murdering someone. Here's the thing about this tweet. Let's go through these little points one at a time. They defund your police. Has anybody defunded the police anywhere in the country? No. There has not been one police department anywhere in the country that has been completely defunded and shut down, and now the city doesn't have any police. No, that has not happened, right? I think there was one instance of a police department being closed and a new one started with different people in charge. I think that happened once. Especially, though, when it comes to the NYPD, they have not been defunded at all. The NYPD, for those of you guys out there who didn't know, has a budget in the billions with a B, of dollars. Billions and billions of dollars go into the NYPD. Right. They have a budget like the size of a small country. It's, let's just take I'm not going to worry about it right now, but billions of dollars, right? So, no, NYPD has not been defunded at all in the slightest in any way whatsoever, right? Close the mental asylums. Do you want to know who actually closed all the mental asylums in this country? Ronald Reagan. See, it may surprise some of you youngsters out there to know that homelessness was not always a gigantic problem like it is now. Like, sure, there were always homeless people in the country. You always had hobos and bums and stuff who would jump on trains and blah, 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 right? And any big city would have its population of homeless people, even back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, right? But it was way lower back then. One of the reasons why is because we used to have actual mental asylums where people could be committed and it would be paid for by the state or whatever, that kind of thing. And you want to know who started shutting that shit down? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan. When he was governor of California, for example, cut all the state funding to mental asylums, and then he went to an outpatient program. That was the whole idea, is that, they would just, people who would live at home, and then they would go and check themselves in and, just go for therapy on the weekends or some shit like that. Well, that's great if you're just like, have a thing that is manageable, like depression or something. But what about if you're like, if you need, 24-hour care and you don't have a family, if you don't have anyone to take care of you, somebody who's like severely mentally disabled enough to where they can't hold a job, are you going to hire someone who's like schizophrenic or whatever? Or like, no, like they're not going to be able to hold a job. So that is when the homeless population in California, for example, skyrocketed. When Ronald Reagan shut all that stuff down. And then that started happening all around the country. Right, so you want to know who actually closed the fucking mental asylums? It was Republicans, right? So fuck you. And then this let the criminals out of jail shit. I don't know where they're getting that from. We have like the highest number of criminals like in the Western world. In fact, you know what? I'm going to look that up. United States criminal population. 2023. Let's see. How many Americans are incarcerated in 2023? Here we go. So we have 1.9 million people in prison. This is according to the Prison Policy Initiative. 2.9 million people are. Let me make that a little bigger. I can't really read that. Right. So this is what I'm looking at for you guys. This is from May of 2023. Let's see. 1.9 million people in prison. Where's the actual thing? Here we go. 1.9 million people. 2.9 million people on probation. 800,000 are on parole. So add all that up. What is that? 3, 4, 5 million people almost. So, yeah, 5 million people in the system. I think what he's referring to is that when COVID came around, they started doing things like home house arrests and stuff like that because they didn't want a bunch of like people in prison all spreading COVID amongst each other. Because that's actually what happened when COVID tore through the prisons and everybody in prison got COVID. Shitload of prisoners died, right? But yeah, so yeah, no one is letting all the criminals out of jail. That's fucking bullshit. Remember, folks, it doesn't have to be real. It just has to, it doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be real. They just have to repeat it over and over and over and over again. One more from fucking End Wokeness. This is what they mean when they preach about justice. This Rochester man given 180 days in jail for raping girls. And then, of course, Daniel Penny getting arrested. So this is another sort of trick that the Nazis and the white supremacists use, is that they will constantly post videos and pictures and news articles of black people committing crime. Right? There's entire subreddits and websites where this is all they do, is they just post pictures of black people committing crime, black people fighting, news stories about, this black guy, whatever, raped a girl, whatever, this black guy fucking stole this, blah, 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 over and over and over. And it has an effect of, it's a tool in radicalizing people, right? And then you start seeing shit like, then people start saying stuff, oh, well, the 1350 and all this other ridiculous bullshit, right? What was it? 1350 is another white supremacist meme where they claim that, black people commit 50% of the crime and they're only 13% of the population, which is bullshit. It's untrue bullshit. But this is one of the methods they use, right? And very often it turns out, well, there's more to the story. So I actually looked this up. This story right here of this guy right here says, man given 180 days in jail for raping girls. What's the actual story? It is not an adult. So what happened is that this guy right here, this dude that the picture is of, was a teenager who basically raped a girl, right? So here's the thing. He was a minor who raped another minor, right? Now, I'm not defending that, saying that's good or he should get away with it or anything like that. But that's a lot different than an adult raping a little girl. You notice the headline says man. Rochester man. No, right. Now he is an adult now, because what happened? Well, this was in 2019. He was arrested. And then his trial got pushed back because of COVID. So now he's an adult. Because he was like 16 when this shit happened, right? And what was that? 2019 was 4 years ago, so he's 20 years old now. Okay. And here's the thing about that is that, yes, it's wrong. He should be held accountable, but he ended up taking a plea deal for the 180 days. And the plea deal says that, because what happened is, since it got pushed back so far and he was no longer a minor, is that they wouldn't be able to charge him at all. That's basically what was going to happen, and he was going to get away with it scot-free. And instead, he ended up taking this plea deal saying, okay, I'll serve some time, but I also will get this expunged from my record and will not have to be put on the sex offender list. Now, is that a good thing? No. Obviously, he needs to be held accountable for what he did, even if he was a kid when he did it. 16 is a child, all right? And raping another child is like, it's bad, it's horrible. He needs to be held accountable for it. But it's no. If you were to read this headline, you would automatically assume that he was an adult, that he was a man, that he's in his 20s or something. Different fucking story. You see how, but that's the thing is that when you just post it in a meme like this, you don't get that nuance, right? It's like, no, you don't punish children to the same extent for shit that they do when they're children that you do for adults. Even, no, it's the same reason why you don't, like, say if a child murders somebody, which they often do, and you don't try them as an adult, they don't go to jail for life. It's like you don't take someone who's like 16 years old who murders someone and then put them in jail for life. You don't do that. They get out at a certain time later on because they were children when this shit happens, and the law understands that when children commit crimes like this, it's like they don't have the agency. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have it's different when you're an adult, and you should know better by the time you're an adult. But when you're a child, you don't know better. And this is why you often see, like, they'll often say, like, well, we want to try this child as an adult. And they'll usually do that when, like, say the kid is like 16 or 17 and say they're in a gang shooting or something like that. It's like they should have known better. We want to try them as an adult. And it's like, I don't know. So in this case, is this like, I'm not trying to say that this guy should get away with it, but what I am trying to say is that when you post it in a meme like this, it loses the nuance. You don't get the full story, right? Because memes like this are just designed to invoke hate. What this is basically saying is, look, they let this piece of shit go, but this guy over here, who's a hero, is actually getting the book thrown at him. That's what this meme is supposed to say. It's supposed to invoke racist hatred. And in real life, if you just scratch the surface just a little bit, all that shit falls apart. One more. Here's one more from an account called Unbiased Crime Report. I'm fine with Penny serving 18 months in jail just as these two did for murdering someone playing the knockout game. Unbiased Crime Report is another Twitter account where all they do is post news and stories and videos of black people committing crime, specifically black people committing crime. That's all they do. Now remember, folks, there are more white people in jail than black people, right? It's disproportionate. There's a disproportionately high number of black people in jail, but still, overall total numbers, more white people in jail for murder, more white people in jail for drug dealing, more white people in jail for everything. Because we have more white people in the country than anybody else. White people still make up something like 68% of the population. It's still way higher than everybody else. So there's going to be way more. So, but why do they focus on specifically black people? Why, if I'm more likely to be raped and robbed and murdered by a white person than a black person everywhere in this country, why do they always focus on black people? Because they don't actually care about crime, right? They don't actually care about crime. Keep that in mind. They don't actually care about keeping people safe. They don't actually care about justice. They don't actually care about any of that stuff, right? It's there to drum up racist hatred. It's specifically designed for you to look at this meme and then pull out any racist feelings you may have and magnify those. They're recruitment tools. This knockout game shit hasn't been a thing for literally a decade. You know what the knockout game was? There were some kids in Philadelphia or something, some city on the East Coast, who were basically doing snatch and grabs is what they were doing. They called it the knockout game, and they went up and they would punch somebody, knock them over, steal their purse, steal their wallet, shit like that, and run away. Basically fucking just snatch and grab, mugging people is what it was, right? And it became popular. Kids were filming themselves doing it and putting it on the internet. And, of course, going to prison afterwards, right? Going to jail for that shit, because you're not allowed to just beat people up and assault them and steal their shit. That's just straight up fucking crime, right? It has become a meme in racist right-wing circles because there were a couple of videos of black kids doing it. And keep in mind that the knockout game was not just black children, black teenagers, right, doing it. It was like everybody of all races and colors were doing the knockout game. They were all doing it. But that quickly faded away. It's not even a thing anymore. Nobody actually does that anymore, right? But these people are still talking about it. It's like literally like 2006 is when that shit was a thing. Like, let's look that up. When did the knockout game things start? Okay. Knockout game. Let's see. Assaults in which a person. Here we go. Let's look up Wikipedia. One of the names given to the United States for assaults in which a person with others acting as accomplices attempts to make an unsuspecting victim lose consciousness with a single sucker punch. Basically, they run up, punch somebody, and then, like, rob them. Oh, here we go. The assaults have similarities to the happy slapping trend seen in Europe, in which camera phones are used to record results. Oh, wow. Looks like it's been around for a very long time. Let's just look at the Wikipedia thing for this. Look how it's been around for a very long time. Before 1992, it was also called Wilding One Hit Quitter in the 80s and early 90s. Okay. So when did this shit start? Yeah, here we go. 2009. Right. That's like the earliest like modern American example they have, 2009. So this shit has been like, I mean, it's literally 14 years since this has been a thing. Right? Since people have like since it trended on Google or whatever. And these motherfuckers are still talking about it. Still talking about it. For fuck's sake. They don't care. It's all racist hatred. Racist hatred to the point where someone can straight up murder somebody else. And they'll still defend this guy. Like, what's it going to take for somebody to, like, for a right-winger to actually stand up for the truth and justice and all that shit? I mean, we've already seen it. Mass murder doesn't seem to fucking do it. Like, a Nazi can straight up go into a mall in Texas and kill a bunch of people, and they'll fucking defend his ass. You can just walk up and strangle a black guy to death, and they'll defend you. You can shoot him through your door before they even answer. Before you don't even have to answer the door. You could just shoot them through your door. They'll fucking defend you. The worst fucking people ever. It's disturbing. You don't have a lot of ways to fight back against this, except shame. Shame, and you have to. This is the battle of war, where it's like they don't value human life. They seriously don't. It's the right wing in this country, the MAGA chuds, right? The Trump supporters, conservatives and Republicans of all stripes really do not give a flying fuck about life. As long as they get to pwn the libs, they're perfectly happy letting people die over and over again. Worst fucking people ever, folks. Hello, folks. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.